Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships and healing from these narcissistic relationships. So let's talk a little bit about the whole victim-martyr vibe of narcissistic people and the reactions that can pull out for us. So narcissistic people are eternal victims. While this is much more pronounced in the vulnerable narcissistic style, it's pretty universal. There's a lot of them, when things don't go their way, it's a lot of woe is me, nothing's ever fair to me, my life is uniquely unfair. A part of the framework of narcissism in the DSM captures this by focusing on envy, that narcissistic people envy other people, which really is a manifestation of the whole victim thing. They have more than me, they have better than me, why can't I have what they have? And when you mix that all together with entitlement, you get the sense of, I am owed what they have. I deserve what they have. I should have what they have. This victim-y part of narcissism is a central pillar of the vulnerable formulation of narcissism. This is the type of narcissism that is more sullen, resentful, broodingly angry, aggrieved, passive-aggressive. In fact, many people don't even clock it as narcissism because people who are more vulnerably narcissistic also look more socially anxious. They may look mildly depressed, irritable, somewhat hostile, things that make us believe that something else is going on, and it often is. But vulnerable narcissistic folks, like I said, lack that slick vibe of the grandiose narcissistic person or the scary menace of the malignant narcissistic person. However, the type of narcissism doesn't matter. If a narcissistic person believes they are not getting theirs, they will almost immediately fall into victim mode. But this is different than another mode we witness narcissistic people often falling into, and that is the martyr mode. The martyr mode is the look how I suffer. Look how much I gave up. Look what I'm willing to give up mode that the narcissistic person often uses to manipulate other people or to garner validation. So let's look at a few ways that this can show up. I'm going to give you direct examples of things that people have said. I left my granddaughter's birthday party early to pick you up at the airport because I didn't want you to have to go through the rigors of having to take a cab. I always have to take a cab because I hate inconveniencing people and I know how difficult it is. Another example would be, I gave up my life and career so you could have an education and a more comfortable life than me. Another would be, me and the administrative team have decided that we aren't getting new computers and better software to run the business, so you all could get raises. Or it could be, I never asked for anything from you except these simple little holiday traditions that I love. Another example would be, I can see that you expect me to give up my vacation this year to help you with your baby. I know as I thought about this, as I was coming up with examples, I'll be very, very open. I cringed a bit because I'm like, I've kind of done some of these martyry things, many of us, especially when we are frustrated. And now I'm actually just pretty ashamed. But I've caught myself, so I hope to change. And this pattern of the martyr thing, this is one of those patterns that, yeah, the narcissistic people do, but it's also a pattern that people in narcissistic relationships can sometimes fall into. Because sometimes we're so desperate to be seen in these relationships, we're trying to show them all we do for them, and they never notice us. So just keep an eye out for that because you don't want it to generalize to healthy relationships. But when it comes to this martyr thing, narcissistic people do it all the time. And it's actually a pretty skilled maneuver on their part because they get a lot of juice out of it. The martyr stuff is stuff they don't need to say. So for example, if they told the friend that they were leaving a birthday, or they told the friend ahead of time that they were leaving a birthday party early to come to the airport, the friend would have had the opportunity to say, absolutely not. No, please don't. I can easily take a cab and I'll meet up with you. But after the fact, Now the person being picked up at the airport is left holding the bag. They were never told about the birthday party, and now they feel even more beholden and maybe even guilty. The whole martyr thing is a way of getting what they want by playing on your empathy, compassion, and guilt, because it's more efficient than asking for it directly, too. Instead of, I love having these holiday traditions with the family, it's twisted into, I'm such a good person that asks for so little. It kind of blocks the capacity of other people to tell them no. And this martyr complex is a reason why setting boundaries in narcissistic relationships is so difficult. I know that some of you are thinking, oh, just don't fall for it. But it's really difficult not to fall for it, especially if the story tracks. For example, the parent who may ostensibly have made some sacrifices, or at least had a much more difficult early life than you did, constantly reminding you of that, it wears on you. And sometimes you give in, not because you aren't good at boundaries, but because you do kind of feel bad and you just can't listen to it anymore. Martyrs do not make a good dinner party guest. They get very dull very quickly. This martyr thing also pushes you into doing their dirty work. For example, look at that vacation one I shared with you. I guess you want me to give up my vacation this year so I can come out and help you with the baby or the dog or whatever, fill in the blank. No, you don't want them to give up their vacation. Yes, perhaps they had agreed to help with a family issue, so now the setup is that in order to get them to help you with the baby or dog or whatever it is they're helping you with, you become the bad one. And now instead of asking for help, this has now turned into you're the one who's asking them to give up a vacation. It's all very Darvo-ish, and it is very uncomfortable. The martyr move is very, very central to the communal and the self-righteous narcissistic people's playbooks. The communal narcissist, the narcissist who gets their validation by being perceived as some sort of grand savior, actually maintains an identity of being, again, this sort of living saint who gives so much, who does so much, and sacrifices. But my reading on saints was that when they were alive, they didn't actually draw a lot of attention to themselves. But for the and then they have to be dead too, right? But for the communal narcissist, being lauded and praised for their sacrifices and being held on a pedestal for being so giving is the win for them. Oh, he gives up so much for his family. Oh, she gave up everything to make sure her kids could have better lives. Please notice the sacrifice I made. And they will also use that framing of themselves as sacrificial human beings as a way to get things done. For the self-righteous narcissistic folks, it is often a focus on how carefully they live their lives. Oh, I never gave in to the things in life that mattered to me. I held back on the things I wanted to be sure the people around me could pursue their dreams. Or I hold back on things I would like to get myself to save money so I can give back to others. As you can imagine, asking someone who's saying that kind of stuff, asking them to borrow $1 is not going to be worth it. It's important to understand the distinction because most of us are more clear on the woe is me victimized element of narcissism, but this martyr part often gets missed. Remember that narcissistic people often hold a conception of themselves as great people, genuinely believing that they're warm, empathic, generous, and they also do see themselves as being victims or misunderstood. But this martyr piece can very much contribute to long-term trauma bonds for people in relationships with them. The victim part may play on our pity. We pity a person for whom life isn't going the way that they want, or who has failed to launch, or they keep selling the story that everybody's out to get them. The interesting thing about pity is that, yes, it may keep us stuck in a relationship, doing things, trying to make things right for the other person, trying to rescue them. It also does kind of even things out a little. If we pity someone, we do see them as less powerful. This martyr thing is different because it plays on guilt. And guilt can really fortify the trauma bond. The martyr piece, the sense that we owe someone, or now we owe someone because they made a sacrifice that benefited us, or that they've given so much up for us, or just has given stuff up. That almost puts or keeps them on a higher plane. So the asymmetry in the relationship, which is classical of narcissistic relationships, is maintained. But at the same time, it plays on an intense sense of guilt and an eternal sense of beholdenness. Many people with narcissistic parents will say this martyr complex is what kept the trauma bond in place for a very long time. And this can also happen in friendships or other long-term relationships. In healthy relationships, we maintain constant awareness of the other, including the sacrifices they have made, and we behave in accordance with that. We compromise as well, we offer gratitude, but it's a two-way street, and they see us too. And in a healthy relationships, the sacrifice someone else made are not weaponized by that person as a way to mobilize people to do something. The entitlement, none of that, you owe me. Keep an eye out for that martyr complex. In many cases, it may not even register because it is so baked in to the communication patterns in this relationship. But it also keeps the guilt baked in. And that guilt can be something that continues to be a prevailing theme, or at least avoiding the sense of guilt, that motivates you in all of your relationships. Thanks again.